Good to go now? All righty, got thumbs up, thumbs up. Good morning, how's everybody today? Welcome to the Bread Beckers. Anybody here never been to the Bread Beckers before? Everybody's new. Y'all are all old school at milling your own wheat, making your own bread. You got that down, so now you're here to learn how to make bagels. Okay, well I want to welcome you, welcome our online people, viewers that are watching. Please remember that our classes are web streamed live. If you could silence your cell phone, that would be fabulous for us. Not that we're like, you know, that intense and big deal, but it does help even for the rest of the audience sitting here. And also know that if you missed something or you want to go back and look at it, the classes are archived. So you can go back and watch this class again if you need to, or share it with a friend. Be sure to tell friends and family and other people that they can watch our classes online. We're really getting a good response from that. Any of y'all watched some of the online classes before? The pizza class, I hear, is great. And Ashley and my son Caleb just did a vegetable box Friday. Those of you that don't know, we have a organic produce co-op that delivers here every Thursday. If you don't, it's Nature's Garden Delivered. If you don't know about it, you can pick up information sheet at the checkout. It's delivered every week here. It's not us, but we're just the drop-off place. So my daughter and son put together a class last Friday around the box of organic produce that everyone had ordered. So you go online and check that class out. So how many of y'all are scared of bagels? You're like, it's too complicated. Well, Ashley, my daughter, told me the first time I ever taught this class, there was 100 people. I was kind of glad that it was a smaller class today because you're going to be able to sit at tables and be a little more comfortable, I think. But she said I'm the only person she knew of that could get away with telling 100 people that they were dumb. And they laughed about it, and I'm like, I did not tell anybody they were dumb. She goes, Mom, you told them they were going to feel really stupid for coming to a bagel class when they saw how easy it was. So I'm not telling you you're stupid, but I was the same way. I shied away. I read all this boiling, and I'm like, this has to be hard. First time I did it, I was like, okay, this is really not hard at all. In fact, there's a lot of mystery about where bagels actually got started. There's a lot of legend and discrepancies and stories of where they came from. But one actually kind of thought is that it was something that Jews who had a restricted Sabbath day, they and couldn't work and couldn't make bread, that's where bagels came from. And of course we all know that they're very traditionally Jewish, and that it would be at the end of the Sabbath, when the Sabbath was over, this was a bread that they could actually jump up and make without the long rising processes. So I hope that encourages you to know that, okay, this was a bread they actually made to make an easy process in making bread. So So I just thought I'd throw that out there to encourage you as like, okay, they kind of came up to be fast. It really is. Once you get the process down pat, it's really easy to make a large batch at one time. I usually make 3 dozen at a time, and that is 2 or 3 recipes of the recipes that I'm going to give you. I came up when I really started looking for bagel recipes. There is a recipe in my book, and you can certainly, my recipe collection that we sell, there is a bagel recipe in there. I will tell you that as I started looking a little further and for the history of bagels and stuff like that before I taught the class the first time, I did find these 2 recipes that are in your handout today, and I must tell you I like both of these better than the one that's in my cookbook. Just a slight little difference, not a lot, but the basic process with bagels, though, is the 2-step process of boiling them and baking them. So that's what makes a bagel a bagel. Traditionally, in Jewish tradition, they are not sweet. That's something that Americans have done to it. But I think I love the texture of bagels. It's a great breakfast bread, and like I said, we tend to think of breakfast foods as a little sweeter. Did y'all like the orange cranberry cinnamon bagels this morning? And that was the orange whipped honey orange butter that served with it. Of course, you could certainly serve several anything you want with it. I didn't toast them. They're fresh this morning, but they are wonderful after you've baked them. To slice them with the handy bagel guillotine that we sell is fabulous for slicing, and then just pop them in the toaster just like you normally would any other bagel. They freeze really well. You do, because of the egg wash, and I'll go over some of this in a minute, we're going to do an egg wash to make all the toppings stick to it and give it a shiny look about it. I do find that they mold very quickly, so you probably want to keep bagels in your refrigerator after you've cooked them, or freeze them if you make a large batch at one time. The first use, I thought I would give y'all some of the little bit of interesting history tidbits that I learned, but the first use of the word bagel seems to be in a manuscript dated back to about 1610, and it was an edict that stated that the item, this bagel, was to be given as a gift to any woman in childbirth. I thought, well, that's interesting. There's some other legends around the fact that the first person to make a bagel was a Polish king, and he was making this gift to give to someone that was coming to visit him, and it was a kind of a celebration of their victory in a battle. So I don't know about all that, but I do know that the art of bagel making used to be a very closely guarded secret, and only sons, and there was a bagel making guild, and only sons of the members could be allowed to be in that guild, and you actually became an apprentice bagel maker. So the tradition of making bagels is quite an honorary tradition in the Jewish custom. In 1927, a Polish baker named Harry Linder came to New Haven, Connecticut, and he founded the first bagel factory outside of New York City. He's credited with being the nation's first frozen bagel factory and the first to put bagels in the supermarkets, and that's where Linder's Bagel that you all know of today. Like I said earlier, people tend to think of bagel making at home as being very difficult. When you see how easy it is, I think you're going to be excited. And this is one of those junky foods that you may have been compromising on, that I hope you'll get excited and realize that now you don't have to compromise even with the bagel. Anybody still because you like bagels so much, you'll still buy the white flour junky things? Yeah. And even what's labeled whole wheat, you and I both know it's not really whole wheat. So don't be discouraged. We're going to help you learn how to make bagels. Let's say a short prayer and then we'll get started. Lord, I just thank you for this beautiful day. I thank you for the privilege and honor of sharing what you've taught me with others. And Lord, we just thank you for your abundant provision of just wonderful, healthy, wholesome food that truly tastes delicious. And we ask you to forgive us for altering your perfect design. And we ask that you bless our bread, bless the food that you've given us, and nourish our bodies, that we might be strengthened and healed, that we could be about your business of glorifying your name and sharing the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ with all those that we come in contact with and meet. So I ask your blessing on this time and blessing on all the people that are here today to learn from you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, like I said, in your handout, you have two recipes there. One is the Real Honest Jewish Purist Bagel. That was the name of the recipe that I found on the website. And I am going to make for you today both recipes out of, I'm going to make a rye bagel out using the same ingredients, but in the two different recipes, of course, using the same flour, rye and part white wheat. So I thought I would do that. The the orange cranberry cinnamon bagels that you had this morning were the second recipe in your handout, the whole wheat bagel. That was that recipe, and I actually found it on a website, and it was from Southern Living, and of course I had to change it up a little bit using honey and the freshly ground whole grains. Then the other bagels that I've made for you this morning here on the tray, these I made by the Real Honest Jewish Purist recipe, and those I used Ezekiel mix flour as the flour. I just ground our package of Ezekiel grains. Y'all know what I'm talking about there? You know, in our red cookbook, we have a recipe for Ezekiel mix. This is taken from the 4th chapter of Ezekiel, where God told Ezekiel to take wheat, spelt, barley, millet, lentils, and beans and grind them and make a bread out of them. There's a delicious Ezekiel bread recipe in our red cookbook. I have learned, though, to use this combination of grains and beans in all kinds of things. Saturday's Getting Started class, I'm going to use it to make pancakes. I'm going to use it to make brownies. I'm going to use it to make cookies. So today I used it to make these delicious everything bagels. So I think you'll enjoy the flavor of the Ezekiel mix because of the combination of grains and beans in this mixture. You get a complete protein, so there's just a lot of advantages to using the Ezekiel mixture. It gives you a complete protein loaded with fiber, even more so than just your whole grain flours. So I love using the Ezekiel mix flour, and I feel like the bagels are a great place to use it because bagels, you don't mind being a little denser and heavier and chewier, and your Ezekiel mixture gives you a little bit heavier bread if you substitute it in a basic bread dough recipe. So that's why I enjoy using it in my bagel recipe. So that's what I did for you this morning. We're going to slice up those at the end of the class. I've got several toppings that we'll go over, but the first thing I want to do is mix up a batch of rye bagels using this Real Honest Jewish Purist bagel recipe, and I'll tell you how I did that. On the Ezekiel mixture, I just substituted that flour for the whole grain flour called for in the recipe. I'm noticing that it's saying a bread flour, high gluten flour. Is that what your recipe says? That, of course, is a hard wheat. Okay, but you can substitute the Ezekiel mix, and you're going to pretty much, you know, 1 for 1, however you're mixing up your bread dough in a mixer. Of course, you just determine when it has enough flour, just the way you would with any other bread recipe. You'll also notice, though, that I will go a little stiffer when I'm mixing it up with the kitchen assistant. The kitchen assistant, the roller scraper, typically I'll back off, you know, it can do a much softer dough. Your bagel dough you want a little stiffer than your normal bread dough. So you'll see me, when I do the test to see if I have enough flour, I will add just a little bit more flour there than I normally would in a regular bread dough recipe. So let's get to mixing. This, of course, is the kitchen assistant, made in Sweden. Absolutely love this mixer. If you've never seen it work, the scraper fits in a hole right here and leans up against the side of the bowl. The roller attaches by the spring-loaded arm that shoots the pin down the middle. The wheel rests up against the side of the bowl. Okay, so let's just start with 3 cups of hot water. I've got my hot water. I heated it up in my electric water kettle, and I don't need to pop that lid open. And I got it a little too hot, so I'm going to put 2 cups of hot water here, and then I'm going to just add a cup of just regular tap water. If I'm using just water from my sink, I'll just do it as hot as comes out of my faucet, okay? The reason I have to heat up here is because I don't have hot water coming. It's just cold, so that's why. But I love my water kettle for boiling water very quickly. All right, now I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of salt. Let me find my fabulous new little measuring spoon. We have these new. They're called the Flipper. My daughter-in-law we went to the gift mart downtown back. They have twice a year. They have it where you can come and meet vendors and everything. And one of my sales reps gave me this just to try. And I was prepping for a class and had all this baking to do. And I normally don't like little things like this. I think they're just funky little gadgets to get you buy something and you're just really not going to like it. But I absolutely love this thing. It was the only measuring spoon I used the whole day. And I was making cakes, cookies, bread dough, just on and on and on. Watch it. This is a teaspoon and this is a tablespoon. Push it in. That's why it's called the Flipper. That's a half a tablespoon and that's a half a teaspoon. So I'm not kidding. This is, to me, I mean, I love our stainless steel spoons because of being elongated. They go into spice jars, but I'm telling you what, I don't enjoy doing this. And I baked that whole day with this one spoon, and I love the colors. We've got these great, somebody want to grab those colors and just hold them up. See, we've got blue, green, and what's the other color? Purple? Red. Blue, green, and red. So they're called flippers. They're $5, I think. $4.99. Absolutely, it'll become your favorite little tool. I thought that I wouldn't like, having to do all this, but it's really just not that big a deal at all. So that's our new flipper. So I'm going to do a tablespoon of salt. Okay. 6 tablespoons of mild honey. Notice in your bagel recipe you have no oil. So for those people that are all strung out about low fat, bagel is no fat. Which, I'm not going to go there with you, but it's a great bread dough recipe that has no oil. Now, I don't think you have to carefully measure your honey at all, because some recipes have 3 tablespoons of honey, some recipes have 6 tablespoons of honey. I've seen it all. So I'm just going to measure what I think is about 6 tablespoons right here in my bowl. Okay, so that's my, well, Ashley, I need a new pot of water. Caught that fly that's been buzzing around. Okay, so there's our water, salt, honey, and now we're going to mill our flour. I'm going to mill part, for the rye bagels, you might need to make a note of this. I use about a little more than half rye to wheat. So I did, I'm going to do, for this recipe, I need 6 to 8 cups of flour, so that's 4 to 5 cups of grain. So I'm going to use 2 cups of white wheat and 3 cups of rye to get my 6 to 8 cups of flour. So that was my white wheat. And there's my rye. Now, rye flour is kind of an interesting grain. A lot of people think they don't like rye. Well, the distinguishing flavor of rye bread is caraway seeds. So if you don't like rye bread, you can certainly leave the caraway seeds out and still make your rye bread. And rye flour actually makes wonderful cakes and cookies and brownies. It's very much almost like a soft wheat. So don't be scared of rye. If you think you don't like it, it's probably the caraway seeds that you don't like. So to get the little bit of tang that I want with a rye bread, I'm going to add just 3 tablespoons of vinegar to this recipe, apple cider vinegar. Okay. Just a minute. Okay. I did 3 cups of rye and 2 cups of hard white wheat to get my 6 to 8 cups of flour. Oh, someone unplugged it. Hang on just a minute. I don't know what's happened here. There you go. That one's blown. There we go. Okay. Blew a breaker here. Sorry about that. Okay. And normally my routine is I get my flour milling, my grain milling, and then I get all my liquids put in my mixer here, and that way about the time this is done milling, I'm just ready, got everything ready over here. A little out of sync. I don't usually mill flour, not a lot, for the whole recipe in the class. Don't know why I decided to do that today, but nonetheless, it will work. Okay, so there's my rye and my mixture of rye and hard white. So now I'm just going to turn my mixer on, kind of on a medium speed, and I'll just start adding my flour. When I get a little more than halfway, that was actually 6 cups, I'm going to go on and add my caraway seeds. That was 3 tablespoons of caraway. And then this recipe calls for 4 tablespoons of baking yeast. Notice it's a lot of yeast here. Okay. All right, now you see when the dough starts kind of climbing up the bowl, you want to just bring the arm, just bring it slightly away from the side of the bowl, and then you take it and tighten that arm down with the knob so that the arm cannot go back up against the side of the bowl, and that'll keep it from squishing that dough out of your up and out of your bowl. Did I put 1 tablespoon in already? Okay, so now I'm going to add 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right, now I want to check my my dough here, and it is pulling away from the side of the bowl very easily. So I really should not need any more flour. At this point, with a bagel recipe, you might want to just check that and see if it's just really, really still too soft. And if it is, I would go on and add just a tiny bit more flour and let it be a little bit stiffer dough than you normally would with a bread dough. A bagel dough works very well with a hook type mixer because dough hooks need by pulling and stretching, and so a stiffer dough works very well with a dough hook. You can see the roller and scraper though is going to do this just fine, but you'll kind of get this action going on just a little bit more than you do with your normal bread doughs. Okay, so that's our bagel rye bread bagel recipe going using the Real Honest Jewish Purist bagel. Okay, now I'm going to get my mixer and my mill cleaned away. By the way, this needs to need about 4 or 5 minutes. So I'll just set my timer and let that turn itself off. So let's get rid of our mill. Yep. Say that again. Rye flour then does not have a taste that's unique. Not really. I mean, it does a little bit, just like oats have a different flavor. There is a little tang there, a little nice, interesting little flavor component, but not what you associate with rye. What you're associating with rye is the strong flavor of caraway seeds. I've actually made brownies with rye flour. Very, very delicious. Very, very delicious. So I think you'll enjoy this. All right. I'm going to put my mixer back here to the back and let it finish mixing while we roll out some bagels. And typically when I'm making bagels, when I start to mix up my dough, the very first thing I do is I go on and put on my pot of water and just let it come up to a boil and then just let it sit there and start getting warm, because you're going to realize as soon as this is done kneading, it can rise just a little bit here in the bowl and we can start right away working and shaping the bagels. Okay? So I'm going to whisk it back here and let it knead back here. All right.
The recipe has a bit of vegetable oil.
That is for when you get all done, when it gets all done kneading, it's just for you to put a little drop of vegetable oil in the bowl where you're going to let it rise, if you do want to let that dough rise. Yes, that's what I'm just fixing to show you. Yep. I'm actually going to put on an apron. I just realized I forgot to put on my apron this morning. Yes, thank you. All right. Okay. The question was, can I mix it up in a bread machine? Absolutely. And that's why I chose the whole wheat bagel recipe, the second recipe in your handout, because that recipe used 5 cups of flour. And that very easily will fit in your 2-pound bread machine, the Zoharushi. So that's what I did for you this morning. I did the rye bagel recipe in the bread machine. In fact, the cinnamon cranberry orange bagels I did in the bread machine as well by that whole wheat bagel recipe. So anytime I use that recipe, I'll typically do it in the bread machine because it's just so easy to let the bread machine knead it for me. And on that one, on your rye bagels, you might want to just make this note. It was 2 tablespoons of caraway seeds and 2 tablespoons of vinegar on that whole wheat bagel. That was on the whole wheat bagel one. See, it's a smaller recipe. You got it? So on the second recipe in your handout, the whole wheat, I did 2 tablespoons of caraway and 2 tablespoons of vinegar. It was on the purest recipe, I did 3 tablespoons of each. Okay? Sorry if I confused you there. We got 2 recipes we're working on here. And I wanted to make the same recipe with both similar grains and everything, so that you could taste the difference in the texture of the 2 recipes instead of having 2 entirely different grains and flours and all that. So I chose to just do the rye bagels this morning with the 2 different recipes. Okay, now you are going to find, and you might want to make this note on that whole wheat bagel recipe, you are going to find, because that rye flour is a little lower gluten, it's going to be a little softer dough. So you can either add, I would probably add maybe a 1/4 cup more flour, or you can just use a little more flour when you're rolling it out here. I did, well, to get 3 cups of rye, that's going to be 2 cups, to get 3 cups of flour, you're going to do 2 cups of grain. So it'll be 2 cups of rye grain, 2 cups of rye grain, and about 1.5 cups of the white. Okay? All right. So here's my bagel dough. Now the whole wheat bagel recipe makes about 12 bagels. The purest recipe, so funny, it said it makes about 15 bagels. Well, the first time I did those, I was like trying to divide dough into 15 pieces, and I'm like, okay, that's ridiculous. And they were monstrous bagels, and I'm like, I can easily get 16 bagels out of this, and that makes dividing the recipe out very, very easy. So I'm going to show you how I divide my dough. I do use a kitchen scale, and I love our little Ascali kitchen scales. They are very reasonably priced. They store in a drawer because they're flat. We have two styles and several colors of each style. So I just enjoy using my kitchen scale, and the first thing I do is I divide my dough in half. So for this recipe to make 12 bagels, I know that I need to get 6 bagels out of each lump of dough. So I'm going to weigh my dough and get these pretty even to start with. And it's not that you have to be that exact, but you don't want to come to the end and have one giant bagel and one tiny bagel, because then they're going to bake at different, they're not going to get done at the same time. Okay, so I've got my 2 balls of dough fairly even here. So now I'm going to divide it into fourths. So that's 1. So I'm just getting my dough fairly even here. And you may be thinking, well, that's an awful tiny bit of dough to be worrying about it. It doesn't make that huge a difference, but like I said, I try to get my bagels about the same size. Okay. Okay. Okay, they're all pretty good shape. So now I'm going to get 3 bagels out of each one of those pieces, and that'll give me my 12 bagels. So again, I weigh. And like I said, you don't have to do this. I think it's more important if you start with pretty much same size as lumps of dough here. If you divide this into 3, you can eyeball it pretty good. But you can see once you get to this point, it's pretty easy to get about the same size. Feels a little big. The chopper, scraper, or dough divider is a fabulous tool. If you don't have one, they're just fabulous for especially doing things like this when you're really dividing it out a good bit. Okay. Well, I'm getting pretty good now. That one's a little big. Okay. All right, so now I have my 12 pieces of dough. There are several schools of thought for shaping a bagel. The Jewish way is you absolutely cannot use a donut cutter. You cannot. Okay, now I'm not the bagel police and I'm not going to come check on you, but you really, really don't need one. The way I was originally taught was to make, and I think my recipe that's in my red cookbook, I think it tells you to roll it into balls, then take your thumb and just stick it up the center and just, whoops, this is rye dough and it's coming apart on me a little bit. I might have made a mistake choosing rye to make the bagel, but then you just stick it up the center and then you're just gonna kind of twirl it to just make the hole bigger. So that's one method. The method that I've actually decided I like the best is making a rope like this. And then, okay, so make a rope and then just wrap it around my hand and make the bagel like that, okay? I also on your rye bagel, I just realized what part of the problem is with this rye dough. Don't knead it 20 minutes, and I forgot to change my kneading time to knead 20 minutes. On your lower gluten grains, you like spelt and rye, you don't want to knead it as long as you do wheat, okay? So that was probably a mistake to use rye dough to show you how to roll out the bagels, because this isn't coming out as nicely as it should. Okay, and I was actually going to let y'all come up here and try it, but maybe the other dough will be a little better. Okay, y'all are so quiet.
How long should we leave it? It says 8 to 10 minutes here in the kitchen assistant. So it's the rye.
I would only need it 4 to 5. Yep. Anytime you have, like I said, a low gluten grain like spelt in the bread machine, you normally need, you know, the basic bread dough with wheat, you need it about 20 minutes. With spelt, you only need it 5. Your spelt and rye, you're only going to need it about 5 minutes. So the same with the kitchen assistant, I would only need it about 5 minutes, which is what I did with that dough there. I just didn't think about it with the bread machine dough. And I can tell my gluten has kind of broken down here, and it's not stretchy, it's breaking. So I think the bagels will still come out okay, because they're not going to have to rise big and tall like a loaf of bread. Okay. You can see you'll get a little bit bigger hole with this method of wrapping it around your hand, but it's really fast. And with a wheat or the Ezekiel mixture bread dough, it's really stretchy and really easy to work with. It doesn't break apart at all. If this dough, Ashley, breaks apart, I may get you to put on another batch of dough real quick, and just because I really wanted them to try rolling out the dough. In fact, maybe I'll just have you go ahead and do that. Because how many people do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, if we made another batch of dough, they could all get to roll a bagel. Just do it with wheat. Or the Ezekiel mix, it doesn't matter. But yeah, these aren't even pretty. All right, so now you want to get your water boiling. Which, by the way, these are our new rolling mats. They're silicone rolling mats by Casabella. Absolutely love this because they stay on the counter, they don't slide around, and the dough doesn't stick to them at all. And you can bake on these, so they're just really, really nice. You can put them in the oven. So especially if you're shaping something that's kind of delicate, like the big challah loaf, when I shape it, it's really nice. You can just lift it and set it right on your cookie sheet. Okay. The other thing about your boiling water for your boiling process of making your bagels is you want to put some kind of sweetener in there. I've used honey and I've used agave nectar. Either one, it doesn't matter, but you want about 3 or 4 tablespoons of honey. The whole wheat bagel recipe, the one that's 5 cups of flour. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just 3 or 4. I've seen as many as 6 tablespoons of honey. I've seen as little as 2. So, I mean, I saw a lot of variation there. So that's why I'm saying I wouldn't be real specific. Even in the dough, I saw as little as 2 tablespoons of honey and as many as 6 or 8 tablespoons of honey, depending on how sweet you want it. The same with this. You're just giving it some sweetener there so that you get a glaze on the outside of the bagel. Gives it that shiny texture or shiny look about it. Okay? All right, so now we've got our water boiling. We want to turn down the heat till it's just kind of simmering. You don't want this rolling boil. You want it just simmering. Okay? So we're going to drop our bagels into the water. And you don't want to overcrowd them because they will rise and they will start rising, and so they'll get bigger in the pot. So you want to give them plenty of room. So I do about 4 at a time. In my pot, it's a little bigger at home, so I can do 5 at a time. I can do 4 around the outside and 1 in the middle. Okay. You want it to keep simmering. So I turned it down a little too low and now unplugging it. So you want it to keep simmering. So that's why you want to bring it up to a nice, good rolling boil, and then just find the place in your stove where it just kind of keeps simmering even when you drop the bagels in. Now, I've seen as much as 5 and 6 minutes that you boil them. I've seen it as little as 1 or 2. So I kind of picked a happy medium, and I do 2 minutes per side. So you're going to drop them in. The bagels should sink to the bottom. Boil them for 2 minutes. Then I'm going to flip them and boil them for 2 minutes. And I want to tell you something. I absolutely love these little egg timers for doing something like bagels and cookies, something that you're doing the same time over and over and over, a repetitive thing, because once I set this timer for 2 minutes and it goes off, you'll see, I'll hit the stop, it stops it, and then I flip it and I just hit it again and it's still set at 2 minutes. And I just keep it going instead of having to, I have a digital one at home, and the other day I was like, I made bagels for the first time at home in a while. I've been making them here. And I was like, oh my goodness. I kept having to click, 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 click. And I went, I really miss the egg timer, and it's coming home with me. When you're baking things like cookies, it's 10 minutes. You put the next pan in, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. And maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal to you, but I'm telling you, that digital thing with the other day with doing the bagels where you're just flipping them and then 2 more minutes and then flipping them in 2 minutes. So they're very, very handy. So now I'm going to get them going. I've got another pot back here. Let's actually bring it up and put it right here. Yeah. And what I discovered when I make a big batch is I go on and get one recipe rolled. I mean, like if I triple the recipe, I go on and get a dozen or whatever, 1/3 of the recipe. I go on and get it rolled out and start it boiling. And in the 2 minutes, instead of just standing there, then I can shape the next batch. Does that make sense to you? So that's how I get a big batch done in a very, pretty short amount of time. In an hour or so, I can have 3 dozen bagels made easily. So this was already boiling.
Actually, it wasn't.
Oh, it wasn't?
No.
Okay. I'm going to let this water come back up. Okay, so my timer just went off, so I'm going to flip my bagels. Yes, yes. One thing Ashley reminded me about, and that's actually what I did this morning, is yesterday when I was here prepping for the class, the last thing I did was put on my bagel dough with the cranberry cinnamon orange. And so I set it. That's the nice thing about the Zoharushi is it has a timed cycle. You can set it up to 13 hours ahead. So I set it so that when I walked in this morning, my dough was sitting there ready. So that was nice. So you can put on your bagel dough in the bread machine before you go to bed at night, wake up, and you've already eliminated a process of even kneading and having to wait on the dough to get ready. So then you just start rolling and drop it in the water. They boil for just a few minutes, and then you can bake them in the oven. Yes? What setting on the bread machine? I use the quick dough if I just want to put it on now. Like then I put another recipe of I put the rye dough on in the bread machine, and I just did quick dough because I wanted it ready right away. But if you're going to do the timed cycle, you must use the the basic dough recipe, because that one is the only one that'll go into the time cycle. Okay, the quick dough, I mean, you're wanting it right now. You actually wanted it 30 minutes ago, so that's doesn't work with the time setting. But the basic dough, your homemade cycles, and then your basic bread bake settings will work on the time cycle too. I'm going to get some of this flour off my hands. Okay. Now, once the bagels are done boiling, you want to, I've used paper towels here. You can use towels, just a clean dish towel, whatever you want to use, whatever works best for you. But you just want to kind of lift the bagels out gently. And these rye ones really aren't coming out as pretty because of the dough kind of falling apart on me. Just lift them out, and I try to drain as much water as possible. These turners are working very well. This is the Comfort Turners by Fissler. I love them, cooking with them as well. They're designed, ergonomically designed to be comfortable in your hand. The round shape there to scrape all the way to the edge of the pot. But I was kind of fumbling around this morning. I didn't have my tool that I use at home, looking for the turner that would work, and this one is actually working very well, so I'm going to start using this one even at home as well. All right, so just kind of let some of that excess water drain off there on the towel. Now I'm going to drop my bagels in. My little egg timer is still sitting there on 2 minutes, so I just click that.
Yes.
Yep.
Another thing that's really nice about the Zoharushi is it has 3, you're already probably using one of the homemade cycles for your regular bread recipe. Well, have you ever noticed it actually has 3 memories? Well, you can have, what I have at home is one of them. In fact, I use memory 3. I have all of the cycles turned off except for the knead for 20 minutes. So you don't even have to use the quick dough cycle at all. You can have dough ready in 20 minutes. It's freshly kneaded, but so I usually put it on memory 3 and use the timer function, and so it's only a 20-minute cycle instead of a 45-minute cycle, because there's really no point in it preheating and all of that good stuff when you're, especially if you're making dough right then and you want it right then, you use hot water or warm water and you don't need that preheat.
Right. Do you
cycle.
understand? Both of the dough and the bake cycles, they all have a preheating time, so you can start with cold water. You don't have to put warm water in there. Well, like Ashley's saying, and that's exactly what I have my memory 1, everything, or memory 2, everything turned off except the knead, because I'm pouring warm water. I don't need it to preheat that water for me, so it needs it. So
and even when I use the timer function, I still use my memory 3 where it's only kneading. It's just really, it's when you're taking the dough out and you're going to do something else with it and it's going to rise or it's going to go in boiling water, it's not that crucial for it to start with warm water. It just really isn't. So that's one of the really nice things about that homemade cycle, is because you can have it totally customized.
Okay. All right. Now, this is our dough that we mixed up in the mixer, and this is our real, honest, purest bagel recipe.
I'll flip. You keep going.
Okay. All right. See how easy that is? When the timer goes off, I just hit it. I flip it. As soon as I get them all flipped, I'll hit it again. And then I know that the next time, it's time to take them out. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to divide my, this recipe is the real, honest, purest recipe, the first one in your handout. And I'm going to divide into 16 pieces. Okay? So I'm going to divide it into 4s just like I did before, and now I need to get 4 bagels out of each piece. And this may, I mean, it's not rocket science. You would do just like me. You'd roll this out once and go, okay, wait a minute. There's a better system here. Okay. 3. Whoa. That didn't. Maybe. Okay. All right. Take just a little off of these and put on these. It really doesn't matter.
What was the question?
Just how long does the dough rise? Just enough to soften a little bit, maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. I mean, you can let it rise longer, like this one rose 30, 45 minutes because it was ready. I mixed it up, you know, when I was prepping this morning. So it really doesn't matter. It's kind of like with bread dough. You know, that first rise in the bowl when it's just a lump of dough, it's not that critical. I wouldn't let it go for hours because there's a lot of yeast there, and I think it'll start getting very fermented smelling and tasting if you let it go too long. But anywhere from 15 minutes to let it just kind of sit and get a little more pliable to probably 30, 45 minutes is fine. Okay. All righty. And I have put 2 pots of water on my stove before and had 2 pots of water going just like I'm doing here. I have, like I said though, most of the time I just use 1 pot, and while these are all, you know, boiling, I'm shaping the next dozen. Okay, so you'll figure out a little routine after you've done it 1 or 2 times.
And you can certainly make smaller bagels if you want to.
Yes.
I typically get, my favorite is the Jewish purist recipe. That's I like the texture of that bagel better. And so that's what I do. Well, you have to half that recipe to do it in your Zoharushi. Because the Jewish purist, you'll notice how many cups of flour is way more than the capacity of the Zoharushi. So you'll want to split that recipe in half. But I typically get about 16 smaller sized bagels out of that half of a recipe in my Zoharushi. And it seems to be a perfect size for my kids to be able to handle. And
yeah,
I gave them as Christmas gifts in a goodie basket this past year, and they were about this big by the time they were done, and it was just a really nice size.
Well, and also you're going to notice with using the rye flour, because it takes more flour, you're going to have a little bit more dough. So these are actually coming out pretty big here.
Do you want me to put these on this cookie sheet
yes,
here?
Yes, that's what, if you'll bring up a cookie sheet. Now, once the bagels have boiled and we just let them drain slightly, I just move them right to another cookie sheet. That's not working very well. Here we go.
Yes. Her question was, what flour do I like to use for my bagels? It varies. It depends on what other bread I'm making that day, and I'll just go ahead and grind enough for everything. Generally, my kids like a sweeter bagel, so typically it's 2 parts hard white to 1 part hard red. And we'll show you in a minute when we baste these with the egg whites. And you know, you can see, you know, everything bagels typically have the onion and the garlic and the poppy seeds and the sesame seeds and all that kind of stuff. And my kids aren't wild about that. They want more of a sweeter bagel. So I actually baste mine with the egg whites, and then I just sprinkle a little bit of the honey granules, also known as the sucanat with honey. I just sprinkle that a little bit on top, and it actually makes like a sweet, like glaze on top of the bagel. And then they don't usually eat it with cream cheese or anything. They just eat it just like that because it's got a nice little sweet aspect on top of them. So I typically do 2 parts hard white to 1 part hard red. But you could certainly do half kamut, half hard white, half kamut, half hard red, anything like that. And I've done the Ezekiel flour before. I really like that. So it's just kind of whatever I'm in the mood for.
And just,
Like a streusel topping on top of one?
you can do whatever you
Yeah.
want. Never thought about that. Her question was, could you do like a streusel topping on top? Absolutely. You could do whatever you want to do. Like I said, you're moving away from the pure Jewish, but we already did that with the cinnamon cranberry orange bagel this morning. Traditionally, Jewish bagels are savory and not sweet at all. But you could certainly, the sky's the limit. And that's what I wanted to show you today. I mean, I did just changed it up just a little bit. The cinnamon honey, I don't know why I can't name those bagels this morning. The orange cranberry ones that I did for you, those were 2 parts red, 1 part white. Okay, wheat. You do want to use a hard wheat or grain, something that you would make a yeast bread dough with. In other words, you can't use your soft wheat.
Because it has yeast, and it does rise.
Yeah, the dough has yeast, so it does rise. So you do need something that, has some gluten in it. All right?
What measurements of spices do you use for the orange cranberry?
Okay, yes, I remembered I needed to give you that. Her question is, what measurement of spices did I use for the orange cranberry? I used the whole wheat recipe because I wanted to mix it up in my bread machine. And all I did to that recipe, I did 2 parts red and 1 part white. I did a handful of cranberries over the top. I didn't have quite a nice handful, so I did throw in some golden raisins there. I don't know if you noticed that. And then I zested an orange, just zested it over the top of the flour. And then I took my cinnamon shaker and went shake, 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 shake with cinnamon and a shake, shake of nutmeg. Okay, so you're just going to have to fly with it. Just shake it up a little bit there, all right? It's not anything real specific, but I followed the recipe there. And of course, you put it in the bread machine just like you would any other bread dough, your liquids. So my water, my squirt honey, and my salt. And then I just dumped my flour over the top and made a little well and put my yeast in that well. And then I zested my orange, threw in my handful of cranberries, and shook the cinnamon and the nutmeg over the top. Okay? Yes?
Why did you change it to 2 parts red, 1 part white for the orange cranberry?
I just like the flavor of the red with the cinnamon and orange. I just like that flavor. Okay? Bagels typically are more bland if you think about it. What you're trying to mimic is that white flour stuff, And so your white wheat is probably going to work a little bit better there and give you more of that flavor. You could use all white wheat. You can use all red wheat. You can use Ezekiel flour. You can use part rye. You can see. That's what I'm trying to show you. It really doesn't matter.
It's whatever flavor you're wanting to go with.
Yeah. If I'm making just a plain everything bagel, that's my favorite, our family's favorite. We usually go all out and put everything on it. Then I don't want that red wheat flavor so much. I want the blander flavor of the white wheat. Does that make sense? So that's why I think I wrote in parentheses there that I usually use 2 parts white and 1 part red. So that's why I changed it up with the sweet bagel. I just changed it back to the 2 parts red.
What are
and
you
1 part
wanting to
white.
do with all of this?
Okay, we're going to, on those, I just was going to baste them and with the egg wash and put some poppy seeds on it.
Okay.
Okay?
I don't use a bread machine.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a mixer like you have.
Uh-huh.
When would I add the cinnamon?
I did, her question is, when will you add the cinnamon and sugar if you're not using a bread machine? You mean the cranberries and the everything? Just when you're mixing the dough. Yep, because I just put it right on the top, and I don't ever use my add cycle in my bread machine. I put it on the top just and let it mix it in there when it's mixing. Okay? Did you baste those with the egg wash? Okay. Now, typically, before you bake a bagel, after you've boiled it and you let it sit there, and like I said, I usually boil all of mine first.
These are the same?
One pan. No, those haven't been. Oh, yeah. No, those are Ezekiel, and that's what I was just going to show them how to do an everything bagel.
Oh, okay.
Why don't we wait and we'll get these out of the way?
Yep, I'll go ahead and pop these in the oven, though.
Yeah. Okay. I usually get one whole pan boiled, and then I go through and do my egg wash. And so that I let them get just slightly cool, because if you put that egg wash on a really, really hot bagel, it's going to cook that egg white, all right? And your egg wash, I think it's in your handout, is just like an egg white with just a couple of tablespoons of cold water, and you just slightly beat it. And you can do that with any bread. It makes braided loaves of bread really pretty, and it does two things. It gives the crust a shiny look about it, and it's the glue that sticks the toppings on, sticks your seeds on. If you sprinkled your seeds on here without the egg wash, they'd probably fall right off. It's an egg white. I'm sorry, it's an egg white. Can you do the whole egg? I don't think I would for a wash. It's every wash I've ever seen, it's just the egg white with a little bit of water, cold water, and you just whip it, just beat it slightly. Okay? When you're rolling your bagels, when you're shaping them with this method, you want to make sure when you connect these ends that you really kind of give that a nice, good roll. And stick it together really well. I have had some, they'll pop open on me if I don't just get a little emphatic with it and say, you are going to stick together. And we'll get these all cleared out here, and then I think I heard that the dough is already done in the bread machine back here, and I'll let some of y'all come up and roll a bagel if you want. And maybe we'll divide that into some smaller pieces.
Of course, the smaller the bagel, it's a little harder to get it wrapped around your hand. But if you have, kids, then wrap it around their hand, and then it is, it's not too big a.
Well,
their hands
and
aren't too big.
you can even do it here on your fingers.
Yeah, and that's usually what I have to do.
And
to
that's
do
a little
ones.
smaller than this part of your hand. So it really doesn't matter. And like I said, you can always shape the ball and stick your thumb in. The kids like to do that. I mean, they really enjoy doing that method. And I'm actually going to show you when that dough comes out. I'm going to show you something I saw on YouTube. I started when I decided to teach the class. I saw that there was a bagel shaping video. Oh my goodness. It's like 2 seconds long. I'll show you in just a minute. It was absolutely phenomenal. But I'll show you how the lady did it when we get that other dough out. This dough is not as easy to work with. So just know that too. When you have your low gluten flours, they're not going to be as stretchy and springy and as easy, a little easier to work, as easy to work with as the rye is not as easy to work with as your high gluten hard wheats. Your hard red and hard white. And typically, I kind of go in a pattern, and I meant to tell you that before I did this. When I do my 4 pieces or my 3 pieces, whatever I'm doing, and I've got my sets of 3 or my sets of 4, I kind of line them up, and whichever ones I rolled first are the first to go in the water. The longer they sit here and rise, they won't sink and everything. They'll just float right away when you drop them in the water. And it's really not that big a deal. It just won't be quite as bagel-y texture if they don't sink. And see, they're already kind of popping back up. But this dough was a lot easier to work with than the first batch. All right?
Did we also explain to them about doing your top side, do them face down first, and that way when you flip them, it's that pretty side, the top of what was the top of the bagel here. When you flip it, that's now up, and then when you go to take it out, then you're just lifting it and putting it right out onto your cookie sheet.
Does that make sense?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, one of your sides of bagel always looks a little better than the other side. So when you go to drop it in your water, if you'll flip it over then, like when I go to put this in, I'm going to drop it in like that. So then when I flip it, okay, in the boiling water after my 2 minutes, then when it's done, when I lift it out, I'm lifting out the pretty side. It took me a little while to figure that, and I still forget every now and then. So if I do, then I just flip it back over. It's not that big a deal before I take it out. But I did think about that this morning. I was like, oh, I need to remind them, and I need to even remember, drop it in that way. But again, it's not anything real significant. But just a little trick that you'll figure out after a while. All right. Tell you what, why don't we move that back to the back? And I'll slide this down and I'll do the everything bagel real quick here.
What do we want to? What are you wanting to move to the back?
This water pot. Now, have we made it look easy for you or complicated? See how easy it is? I mean, it really, really is. And what happens here is the boiling water does a couple of things. It gives the bagel that chewy texture that is very characteristic of a bagel, but it also rises the bread quickly. So you can see that's probably why they jump up, mix up a batch of bread dough, and you can drop it right in the boiling water. That makes it rise real quickly, and then you just pop it in your oven and bake it. So literally within an hour, you can have bagels on the table from start to finish. I mean, you really, really can. They bake at about, I've seen it anywhere as low as 350, and you bake them from 20 to 30 minutes, as high as 450 and 500, baking it for 20 minutes. I found the 450 to 500 to be a little hot, that they actually burned on the outside before they got done on the inside. So I think you need to play with your oven a little bit there. I find about 400, 425 is really nice temperature for me, and they bake about 25 minutes. Okay? I'm going to slide these down, and then these will go on and prepare. When you put on your egg wash, so here's my egg. It's just lightly beaten with a little ice water added in there, and then I just base my bagels. And if I've got a large pan, like a whole dozen, I'll usually base 6 of them and then put my toppings on, especially if I'm going to do something like an everything bagel that is a lot of ingredients to sprinkle on, because you don't want that egg wash to dry before you get your toppings on there. Okay, so I'm going to do, this is our minced garlic, and we now have these available for you out there. And I actually love this brand. I've tasted other minced garlics and minced onions, and I don't know what it was about them, but they just had a really funny kind of chemically taste, and these I don't find have that taste at all. So this is our minced onion. Where are we there? The hardest thing about bagels is just to remember which side you're on. Okay, are those coming out or are they flipping? This is sesame seeds. Sesame seeds are really, really good for you. They're actually very high in calcium. So start putting them everywhere. Put them on your bread, put them in your bread, sprinkle them on your cereal. And then this is poppy seeds. I just like the look that the poppy seeds give it. And then I like a little salt on the bagel, since since my minced garlic and my minced onion I'm not using onion or garlic salt. I have used our Redmond's real salt, the onion salt and the garlic salt. I have used that to just give it a little sprinkle. But I love the Redmond's coarse salt, it's not called rock salt, but it's called the coarse salt, and these are our spice grinders, and I just give it a little dousing there with the ground salt, the freshly ground salt. So there are my everything bagels, and they're ready to go in the oven. All right. Okay, so I'll start getting these ready. A nice cookie sheet works just real well for baking the bagels. I love our USA bakeware. Absolutely love it. And guess why it's called USA? It's made in the USA. Can't get that too much anywhere. And the more I use this bakeware, the more I absolutely love it. It is truly non-stick. It's silicone coated, very heavy steel. Just does a really nice job of baking. It's wonderful.
I think I've got everything in it.
Yeah. Oh, the pizzas are fabulous. Everything you cook in it, just fabulous. I just love the texture. I don't know what there is in it that just makes the bread seems to rise better. The texture of cookies just come out absolutely great. Did want to tell you, if you still have some of these and they're starting to look like this, the new silicone mats, we have 2 sizes. This size you can roll on, but it also, like I said, in the smaller size fits in your cookie sheet, and then this is non-stick, so you don't have to spray or oil. And I actually, when I first tried these, it was that day I was prepping. I had gone to the gift mart, and one vendor had given me one of these, and one vendor had given me the little flipper, and I was making cookies and all this stuff for one of the classes. And I really liked the way the cookies baked on this, as opposed to just this pan. Now this pan gives you that same effect because this is silicone coated. But I really love the way the cookies came out on either this pan or with this lining. So just know that if you aren't ready to get new pans, that you can get these little mats. They're a little expensive, but they wash and you reuse them, and also then it doubles as a rolling mat too. So I just love it. All right, so let's go ahead and get these ready. So we're going to take our egg wash, brush it down. And see, these are the ones we mixed up in the class. So they're already about to go in the oven. And just remember, because of putting this egg wash on there, I do find that these mold a little more quickly. What are we doing on the rye bagels? Just some onion or garlic or poppy seed? Just poppy seed?
You're the boss.
All right.
I don't know.
Hey. Well, I actually made some sweet toppings or some sweet spreads, and so I thought I'd leave off the garlic and the onion off the rye one so you could try. I've got some sweet and some savory, so the everything bagels will go better with the savory, and maybe these will go a little better with the sweet. All right. My Latvian son can't quite get used to mixing savory and sweet in the same food group. He's just like, it's not supposed to be sweet and salty at the same time. You just can't do that. And I'm like, oh, yes, you can. Because he's like, you put apples in the chicken salad? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, but that's sweet and that's salty. And yeah, can't quite figure that one out. And I'm like, you don't have anything like that in Latvia? And he was like, no. I'm like, okay, whatever. Is that it? This is it. And I have, if I know I'm going to make bagels again the next day, but I don't typically. I typically make 3 dozen one time and then I'm done. If I'm going to make them again, I don't dump out my water. I'll just leave it, you know, if I'm going to make it the very next day. Or this is great water to use for bread dough because it's got all the dregs of the starchy of the bagels that you've been boiling in there. So it makes really good water to make bread out of. So use your water there even.
There you go.
I was telling them before our class, these are our Fissler induction burners. They are really, really nice, and I'm getting really, really spoiled with using these. We had to get them to use in the kitchen here because we didn't want to put in a stovetop. But particularly for the bagels this morning, it was nice because it got my water boiling, and then it has a keep warm setting, so I just had it keep the water warm, you know, all morning, so it was ready when I got ready to use it. All right, so let's get these basted and in the oven. And then we're going to let some of y'all come up here and roll. How about that? Y'all are so quiet. Any questions? Have I totally confused you with all the different recipes and different things you can do? You got it? You got it figured out? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And then we haven't even gotten to the toppings yet, to the spreads. Oh, my goodness. That is just going to be fabulous. If I were going to put the cheese on the bagel, I think I would do an egg wash no matter what you're going to put on here. Yep, I would. The egg wash does two things. It gives it, I mean, the boiling water already gives it a shiny texture a little bit, or shiny outside, but the egg wash kind of finishes it and gives it a little bit more shine there, and then, of course, it acts as the glue to stick any of these seeds and things like that on. I don't think you would need it so much with the cheese. And I don't know if I would put the cheese on it or just make a spread to use as the spread for the finished bagel. I don't know if I'd cook it on there, but hey, tell me. I want y'all to go home and make bagels and send me what you've done with your bagel.
And you might would add the cheese closer to the end.
Yes,
Maybe
so
not the entire 20 to 25 minutes baking time, but like in the last 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, I would maybe add the cheese at the end.
That's what go do. You pricked me. I'm going to go there. See, I don't go buy stuff like that because it's all white flour. But go and get some and figure it out, you know, and go, I like this. This is what I want to do with mine.
Yeah, the cinnamon crunch one. But you know, I think you would put that one towards, like, after
Yes.
towards the end of the baking.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want that cinnamon stuff there.
Yeah, because 20 minutes with cinnamon on the outside or cheese on the outside, I'm afraid the cheese is going to get kind of burned and really, really brown. So I think Ashley's got a good point there. I think I'd add it, you know, like maybe last 10 minutes. Whoa, I wasn't watching. I looked up and, yeah. That one you probably won't pass a drug test if y'all have that this afternoon going home.
The other thing about the Panera bagels with those kind of toppings is there's hardly any hole in the middle. So all of that stuff, the
Stays.
crunch or the cheese, it's all right there.
Okay, and what she's saying is at the bread companies out there that have bagels is that there's not a very large hole in the center. I would almost do the thumb method then, because the thumb method, the hole is only about this big starting out, and then once you drop it in the water, that hole closes up.
Yeah.
So if you're going to and if the hole closes up, then that's perfect to pile you a little pile of streusel topping or cheese or something like that, and that will, since there's no hole, it'll catch it all.
Yeah. Okay, did everybody hear that? If you don't want such a big hole in the center, like some of these, she's saying, the Asiago and some of the cinnamon crunch and stuff like that, if you're going to put a little more topping, then I would do the thumb method, because and don't swing it as much. Just kind of poke it in there and just wiggle it a little like that. Don't go crazy with twirling it around your thumb. And then that, because when I used to make bagels, the holes on my bagels were only about that big. And then when I dropped them in the boiling water, she was right. A lot of times they would close on up. I'd still have the round shape, but that hole wouldn't be so big. When I learned to do this method, it does give you a bigger hole. Okay? All righty. Let's see how this dough is feeling here. Move this off. That one probably, it can go on that bottom shelf, I think. If it'll. Oh, yeah. See, this is a lot stretchier dough than the bagel dough.
And that is all hard white. I mean,
Okay.
all hard red.
Okay.
It's what was sitting right there. And
The whole wheat bagel recipe.
This is, yes, this is the whole wheat bagel recipe. This is all hard red. And so we're going to let y'all come up and try your hand at shaping some bagels here. So how many we have?
of 13,
Okay.
a baker's dozen.
Tell you what I'm going to do. All right. All right. So I'm going to show you what I saw on YouTube that was just absolutely amazing. It obviously was a bagel factory, and it was one long rope of bagel dough. So you can do this, but I found that I didn't quite have the knack to get it consistent where one bagel was, where the bagels were the same size. But if you can imagine that I took this batch of bread dough and this batch of bagels and rolled it out in one long rope. And I'm assuming somewhere off of that video was probably a mechanized system, and this dough, this rope of bagel dough was coming down from somewhere, having gone through a machine. But it was unbelievable. I had to keep repeating it because the woman was so fast you could hardly see what she was doing. But imagine having a snake, and she would just sit there. I mean, in less than like 2 seconds, she had the bagel rolled and off. And that dough just kept coming, and she just kept pulling it, and she would wrap it and roll it, wrap it and roll it, wrap it and roll it. And I've tried it with my bagels at home, but I found that they were really big because I could never get that dough as the snake as thin as what she was working with there in that video. But it was absolutely hilarious. So those of you that like to go on YouTube or Google the bagel making process and find that video, it was unbelievable. And she just kept standing there, reminded me of Lucy and Ethel, the chocolate factory, the chocolate factory, because it was like, whoa, wow, how did she do that so fast? All right, so we're going to divide some dough up here. Does everyone want to try their hand at rolling a bagel? All right. All right. Y'all are so quiet today. All right. Okay. You ready to be on TV? Or not TV, but, you know, computer. All right.
There's the first batch.
There's the first batch. They're done. Ready to go. Okay. Well, why don't you come up and wash your hands? Why don't this table come up first and wash your hands? And we will. Oh, okay. There you go. And you can do whichever method you want to do. You can either roll it in the ball and poke your thumb up, or you can roll it in a rope and try your hand like that. So there you go. There's your little ball of dough. And I usually, yep, there you go. If you want a little bigger, there you have it. All right. There. There's hers. Yay. All right, now don't, all right, there you go. Just kind of, what I do when I shape my ball is I just kind of tuck it under like that and kind of squeeze to get that round shape. And then I just tuck it under, tuck it up. And I usually go from the bottom and when I poke my thumb up, but there you go. Very good. Put it over there. Very nice. All right. You ready? There you go. You can use whatever method you want. Is somebody going to do the rope method? There you go. There you go. Yeah, if you need a little more flour on there, just kind of. And again, and if I'm doing the rope, I do the same thing as I kind of tuck it under like that so that the surface is what I'm working with. It's all right. Let it do the work for you. Roll and let it dangle down below, and then flip it over and go kind of work from the middle and work your hands up. See how I did that? I kind of started kind of in the middle and work up. There you go. Okay. All right. I need somebody. Okay, why don't you two come on up? And if you two want to come on up and wash your hands, go ahead, wash your hands there. All right, there you go. There you go. There you go. Yep, that's the way mine used to look when I do that. Whoa, hello. Yep, very good. You look like a pro. Look at this. Yay. All right, there you go. There you go. If you last three ladies, y'all want to come on up and, oh, nope, they already came. Hang on, y'all might want to wait just a minute. Very good. Yes, very good. Let it work with you. You know, roll and kind of work your hands up towards this up, and then it'll kind of pull the weight of this will pull down. Now flip it around. There you go, and work it up. Yep. There you go. Either, whichever, I don't know what hand you are, but then you're going to just take your rope and that way. You might need it a little bit longer. Okay. Be a little more aggressive. Don't fret about, you know, being delicate with it. You know, press, give it a little more pressure. Now I might have done it too long. There you go. Okay. Very good. Yep.
Sit in there.
Yep, just smash it in there. And you can see the ones that were the hole was poked up in, the hole is smaller than the wrapping method. Okay? All right. There you go. And if you last three, if y'all want to come on up. Give them a little bit more dough here. You might need you know what? You need a little more. Let me put you. I forgot I had one sitting over here. I was like, these are really small, these last three, and it's because I actually got 13 out of this batch. So now it may be a little stiff to work with. Yeah, get the rope a little bit longer. If you get the rope a little bit longer, just kind of. If you get that rope a little bit longer, it'll wrap a little better. Yeah.
And then just twist it.
Yeah. There you go. See, that'll be a little easier. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. There. Very good. Just want to when you wrap it, make sure though you give it a nice little a good little roll there to connect it, or they'll pop apart when you put them in the boiling water. Okay? All right, ladies, here you go. There you go. All three of you can work right there. Oh, right here. And just roll it. Mm-hmm. Give it a good press. I mean, really give it some pressure when you're rolling. There you go. Now flip it around. There you go. That's probably plenty long enough.
Doesn't matter if it's kind of uneven.
Nah, not too much. Mm-hmm. There you go. You want it long enough that it can wrap around your hand. Okay? There you go. And by the time you've done 3 dozen of them, you'll be really fast.
We'll be pros.
Yeah. It doesn't matter. Yeah. That's good. And you can, if the dough is stretchy, that was what was frustrating me with the rye dough. It wasn't stretchy at all. It was breaking. You can tug it a little bit. You know, if it's not quite long enough, just give it a pull. Make it go on and wrap around, and then just connect it like that. Okay? Very good over there. Look at that bagel. All right. Oh, I did make 13. Huh. There we go. Okay. Yeah, we probably got a little much flour on it. There we go. All right. Okay. And we'll get these boiling. See how easy that was? That was not hard, was it? And I have actually, I really have started, I like the rope method the best. For me, it's a lot faster than rolling the balls. But whatever works. For all these years, I used to roll the balls and stick my thumb up. I think kids might get into that a little more. They'd be a little easier for them to roll and help you. All right, let's get this cleaned up here a little bit. And we'll start talking about some toppings and cutting your bagels. And then we'll do the best part. We'll start eating them. I'm going to have Ashley label them so you can remember which recipe is which. And I'll go over that again too. Ashley, you might want to get some, red. Hello, how are you? This is our resident chiropractor. Yes. Is it possible to make gluten-free? I would imagine it is. The gluten-free bread dough, if you're already doing that, I would think you could just use the gluten-free bread dough and make it work. whatever the tricks are with the gums and the potato starch and all that and the tapioca flour that you already have to do for a yeast bread dough for your gluten-free grains, just do it. Years ago, I actually, when I made bagels one time, and I just used regular bread dough. The biggest key is that boiling process gives it some of the texture. Now, when I found these two bagel recipes, I did notice a difference in the texture, and I do like that. But honestly, you could really, if you had some leftover bread dough one day, or you made a big batch and you're like, I really want bagels, I would just go ahead and shape them, drop them in the water. They're going to give you pretty close to that same texture. So that's why I'm saying I think absolutely if you're already making a gluten-free yeast bread, I think you could do that with the bagel. Probably need to do the make the ball and stick your finger up instead of rolling the rope. That's just my guess, and I might have to get Denise, my lady that teaches the gluten-free class, to maybe try that and work with that a little bit. Okay? All righty. So we need to boil those if you can. All right. Let's look at our toppings here. These are our fabulous dip serving bowls. They keep hot things hot and warm and cold things cold. For cold, you just put ice in the bottom or ice cold water, and then you put your container in and you dump your dip in. The first thing that I've made for you today is I don't routinely buy sweetened yogurts, but every now and then I think that it's kind of fun and there's a place for it. And so what I did and what I enjoy doing for some of my bagels is I'll buy the flavored yogurts, and I particularly like the ones that don't have the hunks of fruit in it, that aren't separated out. And Stonyfield does make their strawberry yogurt is smooth. And so I took the strawberry yogurt and I put it in, these are our yogurt cheese makers, and I put it in the strainer, and I strained it overnight. And so now I have a strawberry yogurt that is a cream cheese texture. See how thick and creamy it is? And now I can use that as my spread on my bagel instead of cream cheese. Now, why do I want to do this? Because this is a cultured fermented food that's going to give you that good bacteria in your gut, and your cream cheese is not. So, and of course, those people that are concerned about fat, this is lower in fat. So this is just strawberry yogurt, and this is actually one whole container. Let me show you how the size of container. The strainer will hold the quart container, 32 ounces of yogurt. And like I said, I just bought the Stonyfield strawberry. It already is sweetened. They do use evaporated cane juice as the sweetener, so I like this brand. It has 6 different strains of organisms. They are live active cultures. It is organic. And so I just dumped the whole container of yogurt in here, and it strained off the liquid. See, there's the liquid that's left. And now I have a spread to spread on my bagel. And I'll show you what I love to spread with. Hang on. Let me get it. I'm not sure. Hang on just a minute. The bread machine? Yes, that's the rye whole wheat. And now to spread my spread, these little $1.95 spreaders, I'm in love with them. They're great for spreading peanut butter, for mayonnaise. they're cheap enough that you can throw them in your child's lunchbox, or if they're spreading peanut butter on a cracker. But I love using them for spreads. So that will be our strawberry cream cheese, our yogurt cheese there that we drained in the yogurt cheese maker. Ashley, would you do me a favor and go get me one more of the dip serving bowls? We should have another one back there. And when I do plain yogurt, like in Saturday's class, the Getting Started class, anybody coming to the Getting Started class? I'm going to serve tortillas with refried beans. I'll strain plain yogurt and I'll use that in place of sour cream. And the whey that comes off of that, I'll actually can use to make bread dough out of. Use it as part of my liquid in place of the water. So you can save all these good things and use them. All right. So that's our yogurt cheese, our strawberry yogurt cheese. And then in your handout, you should have on the back page is Ashley's Fabulous Hummus. This is so easy to make. You never have to buy hummus again. Do any of y'all own pressure cookers? How many of you own pressure cookers? Oh my gosh. You cook the garbanzo beans. I do 1 cup of garbanzos and 4 cups of water, about a teaspoon of salt. I think it might be on there. Isn't it in the recipe? I tell you, pressure it for 10 minutes, 20. I've found with garbanzos it doesn't need quite that long. So 10, 15, and let the pressure naturally release, and it really will cook. And then I drained the garbanzo beans over a bowl, so I don't want to discard my liquid yet until I know how much I need in with the hummus. Sometimes it takes more liquid than others. So you don't want to get rid of your liquid. So drain it over a bowl so you've got your liquid. And then I just dump it in a blender, and you'll see it's garlic, lime juice, or lemon. This is actually lime, salt, and tahini. Tahini, remember I told you how good for you sesame seeds are. And this is an organic tahini that we carry. And this is, it's like peanut butter, but it's sesame seed butter, and that's what it is. Yes?
Do you have a significant difference between using canned garbanzo beans and the ones you crush yourself?
I don't know that I've ever used can. Ashley, have you used can? They're just so easy to cook in the pressure cooker. You have? Do you?
The ones that you cook in the pressure cooker, I think, are better.
She's saying the one you cook in the pressure cooker are better than the canned. She's done both, but
the biggest thing is just the canned ones. It's an aluminum can that they have sat there in, and a lot of times they've had salt added, who knows how much, and so they can be higher in sodium. But yeah, I've used both. I definitely think that cooking them fresh, it does taste fresher than a canned garbanzo.
And let me tell you something. Go on and cook a lot of them, and make your hummus out of some of them. Guess what I just learned to do? This is so cool. You can take, the recipe called for 4 cups, but it was 4 cups of garbanzo beans rinsed and drained, okay? And then 4 tablespoons of oil. So if you only have 2 cups left over, then just use 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And so you take the drained and kind of patted dry garbanzo beans, toss them in oil, and sprinkle them with about a teaspoon of salt. Or I've only made the recipe one time, but I can't wait to try some of our market-to-market spices and powder those and sprinkle on it. And then you just spread them out, you just dump them out, and they'll spread out on a cookie sheet, and bake it at 350 for about 20 minutes, and they'll harden. How many of y'all, do y'all remember those corn nuts that were popular there for a while? Oh my gosh, these dry and they harden just like that, and you can eat them like nuts. They are absolutely delicious. Very easy to make. So go ahead and cook a big pot and do that. And what an incredibly nutritious snack. You got
Actually,
lots
I have a
of
recipe
protein.
I have that recipe. It's in the baby food class.
Is it?
Yes. I make that as a snack.
For a baby?
I make it in the baby food class as they get older, as a healthy alternative to a snack.
They're fabulous. I spoke at Bible study in Richmond, Virginia, and it was a healthy living Bible study, and one of the ladies brought that, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've got to have that recipe. And I couldn't believe how easy it was. I mean, you just toss it with oil and salt and just bake it. And just really nice, really, really nice. It was 4 cups of beans and 4 tablespoons of oil, and I want to say a teaspoon of salt. So very just, and I threw them in a Ziploc bag and just kind of shook them around, but you could easily do it in a bowl. Just toss them till they're well coated, and then just dumped them out. And it's $3.50. I think it's $3.50. I might need to check on that. I think it's $3.50 for 20 minutes. And it said if they weren't quite hard, to let them go 5 more minutes. I let them go 5 more minutes, and then they hardened even more after they cooled. So I'd kind of gauge that. The first time, I think I'd just go 20 minutes, unless they're really, really soft. But they are so delicious. I just love snacking on them. But I don't know how we got off on that. But so this is the hummus. Once you see, you see how easy it is to make. We're talking just no time at all. And go on and cook a lot of, like I said, a big pot of garbanzo, or 2 cups of dry garbanzo beans makes a lot of garbanzos. You'll have plenty to go in the hummus and some to make the nuts or whatever. But they also store cooked in the refrigerator for quite a while. I've had them, maybe even a week and a half, 2 weeks, and they didn't spoil or sour or anything, and I made hummus again. So it's just so easy to cook in the pressure cooker, and once you do that, it's just wonderful. Or can them yourself, which we're going to do a dehydration and canning class April 16th, that Saturday. It's not on the website yet to register, but that is coming up. So keep that in mind. Great way to can your own beans and dehydrate food. So this is our hummus. Hang on just a minute. I love flavored hummus. I like plain hummus too, but I love flavored hummus, and I did add a couple of spoonfuls of the sun-dried, oil-packed sun-dried tomatoes to this, and so this is a tomato hummus. So that's what I did there. I think it says you can add pesto or sun-dried tomatoes or whatever. So that's what I did here. I love this on a bagel. Back in October, I went to a seminar in Indianapolis, Indiana, where I got my certification to be a nutrition counselor, and it was an 8-day class. As I was in class from 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning until 7:30 at night. And I made bagels before I left. Number one, to leave with my children so they would eat something besides cereal while I was gone. And then I took a dozen with me. And I'll tell you what, there was a organic market right down the street, and I spied it when I first got there. And I had a refrigerator in my room, so I went and bought some organic tomatoes and bell peppers. And I discovered having the bagel for lunch. I found some organic hummus, and I cut the bagel in half and spread the hummus and the tomato and the bell pepper and ate it as a sandwich. And so that's why I've fallen in love with hummus as a topping for your bagel. Absolutely incredible. Try it. So I made the hummus for you to go in on your bagel too. So you can try that. Okay, so there's our hummus. And then this, in my red recipe collection, does everybody have my red recipe collection? There's a recipe, hold on, I'll tell you right what page it is. On page 29, at the bottom of the black Russian rye bread recipe is a garlic herb cream cheese spread. Easy, easy, easy. I actually served this at Ashley's wedding. So delicious. It's just cream cheese, Parmesan mayonnaise, minced garlic, a little Italian seasoning. So we've made that spread for you. I thought that would be delicious, particularly I think on the rye bagels, but I'm going to let you eat these wherever you want to eat them, which these everything bagels get served.
Those are
Ezekiel, Purist, everything.
Okay.
All right, we're trying to get y'all so you know which recipe we use, because they have a different texture. And then this dip or spread that I made for you is one of our absolute favorites. It's the Market to Market. Let me come around there and get the little seasoning packet here. These are our Market to Market spice seasoning mixes, dip mixes. Absolutely love this one. Fabulous on bagels. It's just cream cheese, and then the package of the 4 tablespoons of this one's called In a Jam. The In a Jam has ginger, onions, almonds, little jalapeno pepper, and garlic. Totally would freak out my Latvian boy. That's just sweet, hot, and garlicky, you know, all in the same thing. And you mix it with cream cheese and some kind of jam, your favorite jam. My favorite for this is either the orange marmalade or apricot. And I buy the all fruit jam, and that's what I use in this. So this one is, just wait till you taste it. It's got a little kick, little sweet, little garlicky, and the nuts, just fabulous. So I think you'll enjoy that spread there too. So this is our Market to Market. The recipe is on the back of all the spice mixes that we have. Yes?
You could use that with the yogurt, the plain yogurt that you...
Oh, absolutely. We do it, yes, we do it all the time. You can absolutely use this with the plain yogurt. And in fact, a lot of the recipes that on the back of the spice mixes that call for mayonnaise and sour cream, we use the drained yogurt as well. And we like it as good, if not better, than the cream cheese. This one you're going to have a little bit of the tang, because the drained yogurt, it does have a little sour flavor, so you would have that in there, but I think it'll mix very, very well. With the yogurt strainer, it's overnight, so about 10 to 12 hours. It'll give you a sour cream texture. It takes about 24 to get the cream cheese texture, to drain off a little drier. Does that make sense? Yep. You just dump the yogurt in there, put the lid on, stick it in your fridge. Yep. Any questions? All right. Well, the drained yogurt, once it's drained, I've had it, I mean, because yogurt doesn't spoil quickly anyway. I've had it in the refrigerator for, I mean, I hate to tell you, it's probably several weeks. And the dip mixes, they don't spoil, and they are wonderful. Those dip mixes are fabulous. Spread on a sandwich instead of mayonnaise, they're just really, really nice. Most of my kids don't like mayonnaise, but they like the dip mixes, and I'm like, but they don't like sandwiches, and I'm like, the reason you don't like a sandwich is because it's dry. I mean, that's what they say. It's dry. It's just meat and cheese. I'm like, that's because you don't like mayonnaise. If you'd let me put mayonnaise on it, it wouldn't be dry. So I've discovered the dip mixes, and they're like, oh wow, these sandwiches are good. So I love the garlic of Eaton, and they got cute little names, and It's About Time and Greek to me. They're all just very delicious. So I think you'll enjoy the spreads. A couple of little things. The bagel guillotine. These are fabulous for slicing your bagels. These are restaurant quality. I mean, they really do nice. This is not a cheapo little imitation. They really, really do a nice job on slicing the bagels. I saw, we just got back from the Houseware Show in Chicago, and there was a knife there, and it was okay, but I really just didn't like the whole cutting it like this. This is just nice. You just stick the bagel in there and cut it down. So I think you'll enjoy that. We have what's called a bagel butler. I tell you what, I'll walk around there and show you the rest of the items here that I used. And I meant to bring mine from home, but it's, I think we have one out there on display. It's a great little container that you can serve the bagels in. If you open it up, the lid folds all the way back, so you can put a whole dozen bagels in both sides, so you can serve them like that, and then what's left over, you can just shut the lid, and then you've got it. A nice little container to store it in instead of throwing them in a bag and then everybody forgets them and you put them in the bread box and they mold or whatever, or in the refrigerator. So the bagel butler is really nice. We have all the spices that I used today: the sesame seeds, the poppy seeds, the onion, the garlic, and the caraway seeds. The bagel guillotine, of course, is fabulous. The scales Very reasonably priced. These are $24.95. I've looked at other kitchen scales and they're just way out there. And like I said, I like the flat feature on this one, so you can put it down in a drawer or a cabinet. The dip bowls, the chopper scraper, my favorite, the egg timers, and then you're going to love, I'm not kidding, if you take this home, this will become the only little spoon that you'll use. So the flippers, we have our new, these are brand new, the silicone mats. I love rolling on this. I didn't roll out dough too much today, but when you start doing filled breads where you're rolling it out, or pizza crust, I fell in love with this when he sent me home with it. And you can bake on these. And this actually is a baking mat. Now this one fits a standard cookie sheet or the jelly roll pan like I had up here. This one is big. This one actually fits a half sheet of an industrial pan. But this is one of the only brands of silicone mats that you can actually cut it. For that reason, I mean, you will slice this so you don't want to do cinnamon rolls if you've rolled out cinnamon roll dough where you're cutting with a knife. You don't want to cut on these because they will cut. But most of the silicone mats are actually filled with like a jelly, like a gel. And so if you cut them, they'll leak out. But this one, you can cut it to fit your pan if you wanted to do that. I don't think I would want to do that with this one. I would want to just use it as my rolling mat. And of course, it does have the measurements and it has the pie guides too. Yes?
I wonder how one of those would work. You know when you make a jelly roll and you take it out of the pan and then you have to put it in a towel and roll it up?
Yeah.
And you know how sometimes it can stick to your towel even though you've got...
Yeah.
I wonder if you could roll it on that silicone mat.
Yeah, she's wondering about a jelly roll. Have you ever made a jelly roll and you take it out and you roll it up in a towel, but sometimes it sticks to the towel? She's wondering if this will work. My only concern about this is it's not porous, so it's going to sweat in there. That's my only thing with using it for a jelly roll. It would certainly work. I mean, you could certainly roll it up, but I'm afraid that it would make it wet, because the towel still lets that moisture and absorbs some of that moisture, so I'm just not sure there. But really, though, will be nice when you're rolling out something. Have you ever rolled out like a braided filled loaf? I make this cream cheese Danish, and it is the hardest thing to lift because I've cut these little braids and then put the cream cheese down the middle and then braided them over the top. And I have to get like 2 spatulas and I'm up there like this. So these mats are going to be nice when you're rolling something like that, so you can just lift it right onto your cookie sheet. But the main thing is I love this thing for rolling out bread dough and shaping it because it doesn't slip and slide. The dough doesn't stick to the mat very much at all. I use much less flour, just really, really love these. So anyway, I think, can y'all believe this? 10 after 12. You're like, this was really not Sue Becker today. She finished on time, way ahead of time. So Ashley is setting out the rest of the bagels. Remember, we have the cinnamon orange cranberry bagels were the whole wheat bagel recipe, number 2 in your handout. The everything bagels are the purest, and she's got it labeled. And the rye bagels, we made both the purest and the whole wheat. Okay? And yes. That was 2 sticks of butter. Let me show you. Her question was, and I actually was I had the butter and everything out. I'll make it for you. Huh? In a jam. That's the garlic cream cheese. Okay. The orange honey butter back there, all it was a stick of butter. And this is our orange whipped honey. And I put just a couple of tablespoons of the orange whipped honey on it. And then I zested an orange, about a half an orange for 2 sticks of butter. Okay, with our fabulous zester. This one is unbelievable. And if you want to try zesting this orange with this, you ought to come up and try it. And I'll put up the old one we used to carry. The difference is night and day. This company actually etched, I don't know if you can see where you are, there's etchings along here, so it makes the food slide better. So like when you're grating cheese, and their box grater is phenomenal. Never used a box grater like that, and I typically don't use one because they're so difficult, but even grating cheese, it's unbelievable. And these are not just where they've just stamped the little grooves out, they are sharpened. So it's very, very sharp. Does a really great job. I encourage you, if you want to try this zester, because I used to always get frustrated with zesting oranges, but this one really, really works. And I can put some extra ones out here for you. And Ashley's going to work on cutting bagels over there. There's enough for everybody to have a half. We want you to have a top and a bottom. So that was a little serving issue there, because if we just cut them in pieces, you don't necessarily get a top and a bottom. So we're going to cut them in half, just like you had this morning, and you can have a top and a bottom, and spread it with whatever spread you want to do, and try them all however you want to try them. All right? Any questions? The herbs that I used where? This one was in a jam today. I have done pesto and pastabilities and done it with cream cheese or the drained yogurt. I've done the garlic of Eaton. Those are more savory, but the in a jam is my favorite on a bagel, particularly for breakfast. It's just really nice. It's great on a turkey sandwich. That kind of sweet, salty thing going on there. It's really, really nice. So I think you'll enjoy everything. Come on up if you want to try zesting the orange here. You are welcome to do it. And I'll put out the box grater for you to see as well. All right, either one of these you can look at and try if you'd like. We carry the tahini in the store. It's against that wall back there if you want it, if you need that. All right, yep, I'm gonna get you a fresh orange. Ah. Here you go. Here's a fresh one if you want that one. That one might be a little dry. It might be a little dry.